Hello everyone. Hey guys. How you doing?
Hello, teacher.
Hi. Just let me share this. And please, in the meantime, while I do this, don't forget to turn your cameras on. I really need you to have them on. You're receiving some instructions on that. Okay, so here we have. Okay, guys, your cameras. Please turn your cameras on. Everyone. Okay. Well, okay, guys. So today we're gonna continue working on the speaking section. So do you guys remember how many tasks we have in the speaking? How many of them do we have? Anyone remembers?
Four.
Great. So yes, we went through task one. I think 2 weeks ago, it was the one where you just had to tell your opinion on a certain topic. Well, actually, it was last week. In last class, this Tuesday, we went through task two, right? Where you just needed to read a campus announcement, listen to a conversation, and summarize. So today we'll be looking at task three. Now, the structure is very similar. It's also an integrated question. So you still need to summarize certain content. You will have to read something. You will have to listen to an audio file. The timing is exactly the same as task two. You have 30 seconds to prepare and 1 minute to speak. So everything's in terms of structure is quite similar. So what is the difference then? The difference is that this time it's no longer going to be something casual like you had in the previous one. You had a conversation and all that. Here you're going to have some academic topics. Okay, so that is the difference. This is more academic than the other one. So you may have some new vocabulary, but it's still not that hard to follow. Okay, so then you have 5 more seconds to read. So you're going to read a text for 50 seconds. Then you will listen to the audio file, 1 minute, around 1 minute. And then you have the question, half a minute to prepare and 1 minute to answer the question. Okay. Do you guys have any questions so far on the structure? Okay, that's perfect. Please, your cameras though. Now, as for the topics, the great thing about the speaking, I would say, is that for all of the tasks, maybe with the exception of the first one, you know exactly what the topics are going to be. So you can be more prepared. So here in this task, you have these three very common, the most common topics. Most of the time, like 90% of the time, you have one of these three that I'm going to mention right now. So it's quite predictable, I would say. So you can have psychology, biology, or business topics. Okay, so those are the three most common ones: psychology, biology, or business. When you have psychology, it is about how our brain works, memory, experiences, emotions, how we process emotions, how we respond, we deal with them, learning, interaction with other people. That's all it is, psychology. I would say is the easiest one because of the vocabulary thing, but it depends on how you see it. Then you have biology. All the time, it's always animals or plants. You never have human biology. So it's about how these organisms live, how their processors are, the relationships. Something that I have personally seen a lot, something that comes up a lot is adaptations, how animals or plants adapt to certain changes. I've seen that many times. And then you have business. So when you have business, it's not hardcore business like finance or economics. It's towards the side of marketing, advertising, techniques. We could say maybe the psychology of business. And that's it. So psychology, biology, or business. Now, I'm not gonna lie, there have been cases in which you have other topics like art or history or whatever you have there, like literature, sociology, but it's really rare. So chances are you won't have one of these final topics, but you will have one of these three. You will see this when you practice. If you practice from official practice sets, it's always biology, psychology, or business. So I'm pretty sure, well, not 90% sure that you will have one of these three in your test. Okay. So the reason what I'm telling you what the topics are is so that you can be prepared. If you're gonna practice, maybe you can focus on these topics specifically. And even if you don't focus on like the TOEFL itself, this, speaking three of the TOEFL test, you can still read some articles on these topics. You can listen to some lectures, check out some vocabulary, some expressions, and that really helps, believe me, even with pronunciation, right? There may be some words like predators. So that's a word that I've seen many times when you have biology here. So it does help to know what the topics are so that you can be more prepared. Okay, guys? So that's something I could say. Any questions there on the topics? Okay. Now let's turn to the content of this. So what exactly you need to do? So first thing you do is you read, right? We said you read for 50 seconds. So you will read something like this. It's an article, a reading passage. And what you have here is a concept. So you have the title. The title here is a key term. It's a concept. It's something very important that you're gonna have to mention in your response. And then you have an explanation on that concept, okay? So the first thing you do when you get the reading is write down the title, okay? You always need to do that because it's even more important here. You're gonna have to mention that in your response. If you don't, it's not gonna be as accurate, okay? So you write down the title. It's a key term that you need to remember and mention. And the second thing that you're gonna do is you're gonna read and you need to focus on finding only one thing, which is the definition of this topic. That's the only thing that matters, believe me. Now, of course, this is an explanation, so you can have different details. You may have some examples, you may have some classifications, any type of detail. But the only thing that you're gonna use, the only thing that really matters here is the definition. Okay, so you gotta look for that definition in this text. It will always be there. And you cannot highlight it, unfortunately, but you can take some notes. Okay, so you're gonna write down those keywords for the definition, and that's it. You're done with the reading. Okay, so let's do it. We're gonna read this. Maybe we can have Luca, could you please read the text?
Sure. Behavior modification. Individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequences of their actions. When an individual learns through experience that a certain behavior results in pleasant consequences, that behavior is likely to be repeated, and unpleasant consequence. On the other hand, this discourage further repetition of the behavior, while behavior modifications can be observed in experiments. It also occurs frequently in everyday settings when individuals change their behavior based on what they have learned about the consequences of that behavior.
Okay, thank you so much, Luca, for reading. Okay, first of all, any words, any new words, any vocabulary here? No? Okay, so then can you guys tell me what the definition of behavior modification is or where we can find that in the text?
Sorry, I'm struggling with my internet.
Okay, so I'm saying, can any of you tell me what the definition of behavior modification is? So what is that? What does it mean? Or where is it in the text? What is behavior modification?
Well, a behavior modification is when someone or change the way they act, they behave, they live, maybe.
Yes, that's right, when they change their behavior, but why do they change it? Or based on what?
Learn from experiences.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, we can say that. So you guys are right. So it's when somebody changes their behavior based on experience, based on what they have learned about the consequences of that action. So my advice, don't worry too much about summarizing this. You don't really have to summarize. You don't have to paraphrase either, really. If you can, yes, you can paraphrase. It could be good for vocabulary too if you say it differently in your response. But honestly, it's just gonna be a tiny portion of your response. So it's okay if you don't change the words or if you don't find synonyms or something. If you copy and paste in your response, it's fine. Because as I'm saying, you're gonna have the entire response to use your own vocabulary. So this is just gonna be the intro. So you don't have to worry too much. Okay, so maybe I could say the last sentence, perhaps the first one too. So that's what behavior modification is. You do have other details. For example, here they talk about more specifically, right? What happens if it's a pleasant consequence or if it's an unpleasant one, whether you repeat it or not. So that is there, but it's not that important. You're gonna have to leave some things behind. So please only focus on the definition here and try to also have an idea of what it is. Don't just say, okay, this is the definition without even reading, okay? You need to try to understand what it is, what it means. Maybe picture an example or something. But that's it. That's all you need to do for the reading part. Is this okay? Do you have any questions? Okay, very quickly in Spanish, okay? If it's not so clear. So, al principio van a tener que leer por 50 segundos, okay? Y lo único que tienen que hacer cuando lean es ver el título, escribirlo porque lo van a usar en su respuesta y en el texto tienen que encontrar la definición de ese título. Buscan la definición, escriben algunas palabras para sus notas, keywords, palabras que sean key, and that's it. Okay, so for example, here I would write down individuals, or maybe not even individuals, just change behavior consequences. That's it, those are your keywords. Okay, guys? So that is the reading part, 50 seconds. In the second step, the second thing you'll do is you listen to this lecture. Okay, so can anyone here remind us what a lecture is? Does anyone remember? What's a lecture? Anyone knows? Okay, so basically a lecture it's not a lectura, by the way. It's not something that you read. It's something that you listen to. You will listen to this lecture, and it's the explanation of a topic. In this case, it will be a college class. So you're going to have a professor, the professor that you can call, explaining this topic. Okay, so you're going to be listening to that lecture after you read. Now, in this lecture, the professor may have like a short introduction at the beginning, who knows? But the most important part, the only thing that you need to focus on when you're listening to the lecture is the examples. The thing is, the professor will give you 1 or 2 real world examples of how this concept is seen in real life. So you will have some examples illustrating this concept, or this concept of behavior modification, how you see this in action. Okay, so you want to listen to that part, try to catch that example or those examples, and take notes, of course. Now, the number of examples that you have is going to depend on the topic that you had. So if you have a psychology topic, you always have just 1 example. Okay, just 1 example there. And it's very likely that it's going to be just a story from the professor's own experience. So maybe the professor can tell you a story about how he used to change his behavior based on the consequences of that action. Okay, maybe if it's a story. Maybe you have a more general example. So maybe you have something like, maybe, I don't know, like how teachers do this, or maybe how teenagers do this, or how elderly people change their behavior, or business people maybe. So in a more general way, you can have an example of a group of people that does this. Or maybe you can have an experiment, something that I've seen sometimes. So it's like you put 2 groups of people in a room, you ask them to do this, and this is what they do. So this shows that individuals change their behavior. Okay, so you will have something like that when you have 1 example. My advice, focus on the relationship among ideas. So see if you have any cause-effect relationships, look at the sequence of events, try to keep the chronological order of the story, and try to always look for that most relevant information that you'll have. Okay. Now, if you have biology and business, I couldn't tell. Most of the time for biology, you have 1, but sometimes you also have 2. So I cannot tell you for sure, but it's always 1 or 2, okay? No more than that. So if you have biology, you're always going to have like the name of 2 animals or 1 animal that does whatever it is. So if it's like camouflage, you're going to have an example of an animal or 2 that use this mechanism, or maybe 2 plants that hide themselves, whatever. And if it's business, the same, maybe the example of a company that uses that technique, right? So try to catch those examples. What I was trying to say before, once you get the definition, it will be way easier for you to catch that example because you know what you're expecting and you can act like an active listener. So for example, here, what you're looking for in the example is, okay, you're going to have some certain individuals. You don't know who that is or who they are going to be. It could be a professor, his friend, a group of people. We don't know, but you're going to have those individuals. You're going to have the example of a behavior that's being modified. So you need to look for that behavior, whatever it is, and how it changes. And you're also going to have some consequences of the behavior. So you need to catch what the consequences of that certain behavior were. Okay, so once you know what the meaning of the topic is, you can try to look for those specific elements. Know what I mean? So it's really important to understand the definition. So do you guys have any questions so far before we listen to the lecture? Okay, guys. Now in Spanish, en el listening, en la parte de listening, van a tener ejemplos reales de cómo ven este concepto en la vida real. Entonces, pueden tener uno o dos ejemplos, va a depender de de qué tópico les ha tocado. Lo más importante es entender cómo ese ejemplo muestra este concepto o demuestra este concepto. You gotta look for how the professor illustrates this concept with that example. Okay, so take notes, tomen notas, and yeah, we're gonna see. I'm gonna play it for you guys. So grab a piece of paper, pen that you can use. And here we go.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic in a psychology class. This happens all the time with kids in schools. Say there's a little boy or girl who's just starting school. Well, they're not really used to the rules about proper behavior for a classroom. So at the beginning they might, I don't know, interrupt the teacher, walk around the classroom when they're supposed to be sitting down. You know, just misbehaving in general. Okay, but what happens? Well, the teacher gets angry with them when they act this way. They might get punished. They have to sit at their desks when everyone else is allowed to go outside and play. And they certainly don't like that. Soon, they'll learn that this kind of behavior gets them in trouble. They'll also learn that when they raise their hand to talk to the teacher and sit quietly and pay attention during class, they're rewarded. The teacher tells them she's proud of them and maybe puts little happy face stickers on their homework. Now that their behavior gets a good reaction from the teacher, the kids learn to always act this way in class and not behave the way they used to.
Okay, that was the lecture. So before we take a look at the transcript and try to break it down, can you guys tell me what it was about? What was the example there? Or the examples, if we had to?
It's about the behavior of students in relation with the class or the teacher. For example, when students interrupt the teacher in the class, but sometimes the teacher can feel angry and, well, get a punishment.
Okay, that's great. So how is it that they change their behavior?
When students raise their hands, it's like a meaning that the students are paying attention and the teacher has a good reaction and feel happy.
Okay, all right, thank you so much, Francisco. So that is right, it's totally right. So here's a transcript, okay, just to highlight some parts, the key parts. So as you said, this example, first of all, the context, these individuals that we are looking at are kids in schools. So how students or kids behave in schools. And we have two different parts in this example. So at the beginning, when they are new in school, they may misbehave. So they don't behave like they're supposed to behave. They might do things like walking around the classroom, or they could interrupt the teacher and so on. But what happens then? We have cause effect, right? So they misbehave, and as a result, they get punished by the teacher. So that is the consequence of their first action. First, they misbehaved, that was the behavior, and the result or the consequence is that they get punished. And then they also know that when they behave properly, when they behave the way they should in class, so they raise their hand, they sit quietly, they pay attention, then the consequence of that is that they get rewarded, right? So they get rewarded by the teacher. And now the interesting part, the most important part, I would say, is how these kids change their behavior, right? So now that their behavior gets a good reaction, they learn how to act. So they act that way always in class. So first, initially, they were misbehaving in class, but because they were able to see what the consequences of their actions were, whether it's negative, punishment, or it's a positive consequence, a reward, based on what they've seen on that experience of being either punished or rewarded, they learn how to act and they change that initial behavior so that they start behaving properly in class. So that's it. That's how we can summarize this, right? Those would be the key elements. So first of all, a little bit of context. So what this example is about, it's about kids in school. Maybe then the process, right? They behave poorly, then they get punished. They're rewarded when they behave properly, and finally they learn. So I'm highlighting those elements so that you can see that you have details, right? You have things like examples, interrupting the teacher, walking around the classroom, happy face stickers, telling them she's proud, sitting quietly, raising their hand. So you're gonna have that sort of details. You can include one or two in your response, but you don't want to make them like the main focus of your response. Okay, you really want to focus on what's important. So, so yes, we can maybe highlight those. Any questions here on the lecture? Okay, you guys. So now the question. Here's the question. The question's always going to be the same. Okay. Here we have, using the example from the lecture, explain what behavior modification is and how it works. So that's always the same question. Using the example or the examples from the talk or lecture, explain, and then the concept, behavior modification, cognitive dissonance, camouflage, whatever it is you have there. So as you can see, that's the tricky part, because they don't say, you know, like summarize the reading and then summarize the lecture. No, they say use the examples to explain the concept. So that means that you need to kind of try to connect the idea. So you need to really tell me how the example illustrated the topic. Okay, guys. So we're gonna see how to do that. Now here's a template that I got for you. Here's what you need to have in your response. So first of all, as always, as usual, you need a short introduction. And when I say short, I really mean short. So in your intro, the only things that you're going to include is the title, which is the topic or the concept, and its definition. Okay, that's it, title and definition. You want to give them credit, of course, so you're not going to tell me directly, you know, behavior modification is this. Instead, try to say, according to the reading, behavior modification is this. Okay, so according to the reading or to the reading passage, to the article, behavior modification is defined as when an individual changes their behavior based on what they know the consequences of that behavior are. Okay, and that's it. That's your intro. It shouldn't be longer than 15 seconds. Otherwise, you're just gonna end up wasting your time there. And now that you have your introduction, any questions till there about the intro or anything? Okay, so now that you've mentioned the concept and the definition, you gotta move on to the lecture part. So you move on to the lecture to the professor, and you tell me in the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept, providing the example of, and then you explain. First, a little bit of context. So providing the example of kids in schools or in the classroom or the behavior of kids in school. And then you explain. So you tell me, first, the professor mentions that when a kid is new in school, they might misbehave initially. As a result, they get punished by the teacher. On the other hand, when the kid behaves properly, such as raising their hand or paying attention in class, they will get rewarded. Then you say, at the end of the day, the kid is gonna learn how to behave properly. The kid is gonna learn and tend to behave properly once they have seen what the consequences or the reaction of the teacher is. Okay, so that's it. I'm summarizing. I'm using some transitions, right? Initially, the kid misbehaves. Therefore, they get punished. On the other hand, when they behave well, they get rewarded. Finally, the kid learns, and this is, or that's what's happening. So try to use transitions. You can use some reporting verbs if you want. Although here, you already mentioned the professor, so it's enough. But if you want, you can continue using reporting verbs and say, well, the professor mentions that initially the kid misbehaves, but it's not necessary. So that's it. You don't need a conclusion, although you can include one if you have extra time. One thing I would do for the conclusion or the closing idea is try to connect or join the definition that you have with the example, with the details of the example. So you could say, so that's how kids, instead of individuals, right? So that's how kids learn how to behave or learn based on the reactions of the teacher or based on the consequences of their initial actions or initial behavior. So I'm trying to mix, what I have from the lecture with what I have from the reading. You can also go for something more simple, maybe say, to wrap it up, that's how the professor digs deeper into this topic or demonstrates the idea of behavior modification. Okay. So, and that's it. It's one of the simplest templates, intro and lecture. Is it okay? Does it make sense? Anything that's not so clear? Any questions? Okay. Now, all right. So, al principio necesitan una introducción, ¿verdad? Necesitan incluir el título y la definición que han hallado del reading, de la parte de la lectura. Entonces, de acuerdo a la lectura, este concepto, behavior modification, está definido como la definición. Y después pasan al listening, a la clase del profesor y explican, right? In the lecture, the professor goes farther and gives this example. Y explican el ejemplo. La introducción tiene que ser corta y después se enfocan en la parte del listening. ¿Okay? No necesitan una conclusión, pero si tienen tiempo extra pueden incluirla. So, okay. Okay, guys. So, does anyone want to try? Right now with this example, we're gonna do more. If we have time, we can do a business and a biology one. But just to see how the timing goes, especially, does anyone want to try with this same task we just did? Maybe Barbara, you might?
Okay, teacher.
Okay, go now.
Okay, according to the written passage, behavior modification, the definition is that individuals change their behavior based on their experience. In the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept, providing the example of kids starting school, like they don't know how to behave because they are new. And for example, the kid might interrupt the teacher, and the teacher maybe could get angry and punish the kid, and the kid is going to change their behavior.
Okay, good. So yes, the kid's going to change their behavior based on that experience. Great. All right, so no comments, just Maybe if this is too long, maybe we're wasting too much time here, we can say, in a lecture, the professor illustrates this with the example of. So if you're looking for something shorter, that's another option. Not so redundant. And also, my advice, always have the intro prepared, not prepared, but with your notes, you should be ready for the introduction so that you can do it quickly. And then as soon as you can, you start with the example.
Okay, teacher.
Okay, guys. So now let's practice. Okay, we're gonna do business one first. Okay. Let's see. This one here. So here we have the reading part. You guys will have 50 seconds to read. Remember, title, topic, and definition. Okay, so 50 seconds starting now. Okay, now I'm gonna play the lecture for you.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a marketing class.
Nowadays, something you notice more and more is television commercials that are made specifically for certain television programs. So, let's say a company wants to sell a telephone, a cell phone. Now, during TV shows that young people watch, shows with pop music or teen serials, they create a commercial that emphasizes how fun the phone is. The phone has bright colors and they show kids having a good time with their friends. And, well, the company wants the kids watching TV at this time to want to buy this phone that's made especially for them. But the same company will make a different commercial to be shown during, say, a program about business or a business news show. Now, for this group of people, business people, the company will have to show how efficient their phone is, how it can handle all business easily, and maybe even save money. And here's the thing. It's basically the same phone. The company has just made two different commercials to appeal to different groups of people.
Using the professor's examples, explain the advertising technique of target marketing.
Okay. Now you guys will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. Would anyone like to go? Orlando, good. Okay, you can go.
Okay. So according to the reading passage, target marketing is a strategy of advertising to a smaller and specific audience. They usually have the need for the product being marketed. In the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept, providing the example of TV commercials. First, he gives example of cell phones who are being advertised for young people. In this case, the advertise will be about creating and how fun would be the cell phone because the company wants the kids to buy it. However, uh, if it's for business people or other type of more formal people, the advertising will be about how efficient the cell phone is and how it could save them money in other cases. That's it.
Okay, that was perfect. Outstanding, really, Orlando. Well done. Awesome. So, okay, first of all, your intro, your definition was in writing point. You made it short, advertising to smaller specific audiences, maybe that have the need of product. Your transition, I love how you organize the structure, the transitions you used. So it was very concise. So the example of a company that wants to advertise a cell phone. First, if they want to advertise it to younger audiences, maybe kids, they will emphasize how fun the phone is. So you had those keywords, fun, younger audience. Then the same you did for business people, you used however, and you said how efficient the phone is. So content, grammar, everything was great, really, no comments. Remember that every time you have some extra time, you can maybe add a conclusion at the end, but I really wouldn't change anything. So nice, well done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, guys. Anyone else wants to try this one here? Doesn't have to be perfect, it's your first try. So we're gonna practice and you guys will get there. But anybody else? Maybe Gisela, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, do you mind trying this one?
Okay, I'll try.
Okay, go now.
Okay. According to the reading article, target marketing is like a marketing that targets a smaller audience. In the lecture, the professor illustrates this with example of commercials about cell phones. When they are airing the commercial in a younger program, they emphasize how fun and creative it is, the cell phone. While when they're targeting people that work in business, they emphasize on how efficient the cell phone is.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that was great too. That was great. Well done, you guys. I really see that you got the whole part of summarizing and the template as well, the structure. So I love the structure of your response. You had your intro. I like how you summarized the two examples. So you used transition to in between. You said while, and you had the key elements. So great. Maybe at the beginning, I noticed you were like struggling a bit on the definition, but you paraphrased it and you made it short too. So I like that when you are able to get through those maybe pauses that we can have. Okay, and great vocabulary too, by the way. So any questions now? Now that we've done another one? Okay, you guys want to try a biology one? I think it will be good for practice. Okay, hang on. Give me a sec. Okay, I think this is sort of sociobiology, but it's still biology. So let's see. So this is the reading. You will all have 50 seconds to read. Again, topic and definition, right? Okay.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
Okay, so a good example of this, found right here in North America, is something an animal called the American pronghorn does. Pronghorns, as you may know, are a kind of deer-like animal. They live out on the open, grassy plains, somewhat in the middle of North America. And they are super fast. Pronghorns are, in fact, noted for being the fastest animal in the Western Hemisphere. Once a pronghorn starts running, zoom! None of its present-day predators, like the bobcat or coyote, can even hope to catch up with it. It's off in a flash. Okay, so why then do pronghorns run so fast? That's the question. Well, it turns out that quite a long time ago, I'm talking tens of thousands of years, things on the grassy plains used to be very different for the pronghorns. Because back then, lions used to live on the plains, chasing and preying upon the pronghorns. And lions, of course, are a very swift-moving mammal, much faster than the bobcat or coyote or other predators that you find on the plains today. But now, however, lions are all extinct in North America. They're no longer a predator of the pronghorn. Tens of thousands of years ago, though, the lions were there, chasing the pronghorns. So, back then, the pronghorn's speed was critical to its survival.
Right. Questions the same. Using points and examples from the talk, explain relic behavior. You'll get 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay, who wants to go now? Where we go? Should I choose? Maybe Diego?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, according to the reading passage, relic behavior are behaviors which purposes are no longer necessary. And in the lecture, Professor illustrates this by the example of pronghorns, which they lived in thousands of years ago. They used to escape from lions on their habitats, but the lions are no longer uh, living on North America. So they this behavior of escaping from lions is no longer necessary, but they still have this uh, this ability. So that's the example of the relic behavior of pronghorns in North America.
Okay, great. Well explained. So that's how you summarized it. You had your definition correct. It's when a behavior is no longer used by an animal, but they still have it because of, well, change conditions. And you explained it with the example of these pronghorns, how they were chased by lions, but they're not anymore. So they don't need this behavior anymore, but they still have it. So great. Nothing to say. Try to add transitions. Just they make things sound a lot more formal, more academic, which is something that we want to achieve here. So instead of but, they still have this ability. Tell me, nevertheless, they still have this ability, right? Instead of and, lions are no longer there. Tell me, what's more, lions are no longer there. So try to include those transitions, and it'll be perfect.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Now, does any of you have anything, any questions, anything to say or comment? Don't be afraid to ask. Or if there's something maybe that's not so clear, want me to go through again? Or switch to Spanish if you want.
I have a question. What
Sure.
happens if we don't know the animal which is talking about the professor?
Yes, that happens a lot actually with biology specifically. So if you don't know the animal, I mean, you don't have to know it. You're able to recognize that it's an animal that the professor's mentioning. So just try to take notes on however you think it is written or it's maybe pronounced, as long as you hear how it's pronounced. So you're like, okay, pronghorn. I have no idea what that animal is. So maybe pronghorn. Okay, even if you write it down like this, as long as you try to repeat it the way that it's pronounced. So pay more attention if you feel that there's a word that you don't know and that it's important, because it's an important word here. It's important to mention pronghorns, lions, maybe coyote. So if you don't know how to pronounce it, just try to listen to how the professor is doing it and repeat. Even if you don't know what animal it is, you don't really have to know in order to include it in your response. So try to take notes and try to pronounce it the way that you can. Pronunciation is not such a big of a deal, so it's okay if you don't pronounce it exactly as the professor said it, but try to include it because content is important. So it's an important detail that needs to go there.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other question? No? Okay, guys. So please, before you go, don't forget the surveys. Today, we need to fill out 2. Remember, every Thursday we fill out 2 surveys. So I just sent the first one, and as soon as you're done with that one, I'll send you the other one. Okay, I'm just missing 2 or 1. see. Okay, now I got them all. And I'll send you the other one more, please. Okay, so thank you so much for attending, participating. I will see you all next class. Take good care.
Bye bye, teacher. Thank you.
Bye, boss.
Bye, teacher.
Bye there.
Thank you, teacher.
Bye.
Teacher, hello.
Hi.
Teacher, un favor. Hoy no entendí muy bien esto de las clases, de las llamadas. Y quería que me explique un poco, o sea, entiendo, digamos, que tengo que poner mi horario y todo, ¿no? Lo que yo quiero, citar la clase. Pero no entiendo la parte, digamos, yo, por ejemplo, antes de volver a reprogramar la llamada, yo había puesto 2 días.
Okay.
Entonces, o sea, quiero preguntarle si puedo, digamos, la próxima semana citar 2 veces la llamada, porque tengo
Sí,
entendido que solo es una, ¿no? A la semana.
no, es una por día máximo, pero puedes tener hasta 4 por semana, que son los días disponibles. Entonces podrías tener lunes a jueves si quieres, o lunes y martes, lunes, miércoles. Depende de ti completamente cómo las organices.
Ok.
Solo la única regla es que no puede ser más de una por día, pero por semana puede ser cuantas quieras.
Ah, ok, ok. Eso tenía la duda, Luisa. Muchas gracias.
Ok, no te
Hasta
preocupes.
luego.
Bye bye.